I got quoted by one team. They wanted $500,000, and they wanted me to. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I was hoping to get paid. So wait a second. Hey, jeez. All right, we're live on the Money Lap podcast, apparently. I'm just finding out.
I love these cold starts.
I love this. It's so much fun. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Parker Kligerman, joined as always by Landon Cassill. This is our podcast about all motorsports, which we will discuss a lot of motorsports on this one. Some things you can expect is some controversy surrounding the Clash. We have some shakeups in the FIA. We have a guest on this episode, an impromptu guest who joined literally off a text 1 minute later, which was awesome. Bob Pockrass, the king of NASCAR media in a lot of respects. He will join us to discuss some of those pressing issues in NASCAR. We have the racing season officially kicking off with Formula E and the Roar Before the 24 coming up this weekend. Lots to dive into, some short track and sim racing news, but of course we always start, Landon, with the PR lap, where we talk about our favorite thing in the world, ourselves.
Let's do it.
All right.
What's good about us this week, Parker?
Pretty big deal this week around us. I don't know how to put this in any other way than last week was the biggest episode of the Money Lap podcast in its less than year-long history. Most consumed episode ever between YouTube and podcasts. So thank you, listeners, viewers, for paying attention and participating. It means a lot to us to have that support and to know that, you know, as we say, more people than just our moms were listening. But we did get called out, by the way.
I was going to say, we got called out for clickbait, which I've been telling you. We're like toying with the we're in dangerous waters with some of these thumbnails.
So,
what the audience does not know is I have protested thumbnail photos, but I'm told from our production team and all of our I'm even getting a thumbs up from my gestures. I'm told that from the production team and our social media team that we have to do these cheesy thumbnails on YouTube, and they say it works. And then now we're getting called out for clickbait. What's going on?
Well, we did get called out for clickbait because we said Parker was fired, basically, on the thumbnail. But
that is clickbait.
Guess what? It did have our highest click-through rate of the entire time we've ever done anything on YouTube.
It's like a drug.
That did work. I do want to say we were called out by Mater747 who said you were not fired. Technically, I was fired, so we were not lying. And I'd like to make this pact with the listeners. I made a pact last week about going and subscribing to our YouTube and to our podcast and sending it to 3 friends. Please do that. But this is my other pact. In terms of thumbnails, look, YouTube is a simple game. You got to get the click-through rate. You got to get people to click on the thumbnail. For us, we have a new formula for that. We want 10 out of 10s, which means as far as you can possibly go in terms of getting people to want to click, but it has to have truth in it. We're not going to 11 to 10. We won't be lying. So if you see a thumbnail and you're like, ooh, that's pretty incendiary by Money Lap, just know there is an element of truth. Now, that truth might be stretched so thin, it's like a piece of gum that's been chewed and pulled all the way apart, just waiting to break. But we will be telling you the truth. That's our pact.
Spoken from 2 guys that did not go to journalism school or anything like that, nor do we claim to be journalists. We're just a couple of race car drivers talking to ourselves.
We just want
please
people
like
to
and
join us
subscribe.
with it.
Do all of the internet things that help connect us to you and to the rest of the people you know. And to Siri and Alexa, and then eventually your Instagram ads and all of that good stuff. Please like and subscribe to all that stuff. Let's talk about our eRacr, eNASCAR team, because we had some big stuff going on this week too.
Do you want to break the news?
You know what? Yeah, absolutely I do, because we have been at this for a couple years, and we need to make some improvements. We need some performance. We've had some incredible drivers over the years, but we're kind of taking a strategic move, a little bit of a Moneyball move, you might say, to squeeze the last. I shouldn't even say last. I think he can last forever. We've signed 4-time eNASCAR Coca-Cola Series, iRacing Series champion Ray Alfala. to
Bam.
eRacr. The winningest driver in eNASCAR history. More championships than anyone. We've also signed second-year driver Tyler Gary. He's got a technical alliance with Ray Alfala, so that means they're going to be sharing setups, working together, building together, which we'd like to see that on our team. Second winningest driver in Moon Car history, which really means nothing in the grand scheme of things of eNASCAR. But for the eRacr eNASCAR team, we are the meme team. Yep. We are 42 and 69, the two best numbers in all of motorsports. Tyler won the inaugural Moon Car 24, so we put some emphasis into that. And going along with our theme at eRacr, we like drivers that have some real-world ties. So he's a Mod Light driver for Superior Chassis. So he's got some real-world driving experience, and hopefully we can make some connections for him, and he can perform for us on the virtual track and help grow the brand and grow the whole series.
Ray also drives for USPS, which is his day job. So he does a lot of driving, whether it's in his free time working for eRacr or in his real day job. He also made a request that we had to basically know that this was a match made in heaven, essentially, when he said, I want to drive the number 69. For the meme team, that is the flagship vehicle. We appreciate that he gets the 69, Tyler Gary being the 42, and yeah, we're excited. I think this is a big move for our eRacr team. I think we were dead last in team standings last year, so we can only go up from here.
Yep. We can only go up from here. And you know what? For those of you that don't follow iRacing, don't follow the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, or World Championship as they call it as well, this is actual professional esports, the motorsports version of professional esports. And these drivers are as good as they get. They're better than anything I can do in a sim, anything Parker can do in a sim. It's absolutely amazing what they can do in a simulator, in a racing sim, and they are acknowledged by NASCAR. The champions, I think that they are crowned in Phoenix on championship weekend, or maybe it's a few weeks before that. But there's some real, as I like to say sometimes, some adult money involved in this, and so this race team is actually, as much fun as we have, is a very serious thing, and these drivers are professionals, and they take it
my dad
seriously.
likes to say, a billion here, a billion there, and soon we're talking about real money. So
that's right.
No, they're not racing for $1 billion, but they are in the grand scheme of things, the esports world, even just professional motorsports. It's significant. $350,000 prize pool this year. iRacing is invested in Coca-Cola as well in raising that prize pool to the highest level yet, and it's a cool deal to be a part of. It's always fun when we run up front. It's been fun when we've run dead last. So we're looking forward to that. Let's move on. Reviews. We made a pact with all of you listeners and viewers that you would send us the 3 friends. You did that. People gravitated to that episode more than ever before. Yet we got 0 new reviews on Apple Podcasts. We've made a decision that we want to get to 200, and we'll do something crazy. We're at 138, all still 5 stars, but no new reviews, so please go review us there. We got 0 feedback on Spotify. That must mean we're perfect. We did get called out for our clickbait on YouTube, and something new dropped in our newsletter today on Wednesday, January 17th. You may have noticed at the bottom of it, if you're a subscriber, Parker's POV, one of the worst names ever. Pretty much the most self-indulgent name of all time. It's an area for me to give my point of view on some things in motorsports that I find interesting, usually once a week, and you'll see those on Wednesdays. I'm not posting them anywhere else, so if you want to see those, subscribe or have your friends subscribe and send it to you. But yeah, we did get nice feedback from Tom Ellis, who said, great job with Parker's POV, keep them coming. Interesting points on the Porsche Club guys and their followers versus NASCAR drivers. So much opportunity out there. So you'll have to go check that out if you want to see what I said.
It is interesting, and I do. You definitely need to check out the Money Lap newsletter and look at Parker's point of view. I'm going to say point of view. I don't even know if I can say the other thing because it's just weird. But it is interesting to point out, the difference between NASCAR, Porsche Club. There's a difference. They're both racing. There's kind of an enthusiast collector sort of aspect to the Porsche Club, maybe. So it's just an interesting perspective. Speaking of collecting, if you are a racing enthusiast looking for high-quality die-cast and apparel, look no further than SpoilerDiecast.com, one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. What sets them apart? Let me tell you, Parker. At SpoilerDiecast.com, they pride themselves on exceptional service. All orders ship either the same or next day, ensuring you get your hands on your favorite die-cast products in no time. Here's the best part. They offer free shipping on orders over $20. That's right. You can enjoy a smooth and affordable shipping and shopping experience through SpoilerDiecast.com. With over 800 unique products in stock, that is NASCAR, F1, dirt sprint cars, IndyCar. They are passionate racing fans. So they are constantly growing their offerings, growing their inventory, one of the largest inventories in the industry, SpoilerDiecast.com, for all of your diecast needs. Tried to kind of segue from the whole Porsche Club collector car.
I thought it was great. No, I thought it was perfect. It was really well done. Best of 2024 by far. Way better than last week's. So
really? I thought
I
last
give you
week's
huge
was
props. No, this was smooth, though. You never missed a beat. I didn't even know it was coming. So that's when I know they're good. It's like my best friend who's an actor, and I always tell him my best feedback I can give him is the times when he's done such a good job, I don't know it's him. And so when you do such a good job, I don't know I'm getting an ad read to me. So love it. Thank you, Spoiler Diecast. Go check them out, SpoilerDiecast.com. They'll be with us all year. They are the best. Huge supporters of the Money Lap, and that means they're great people. Let's jump into some of the biggest news like we promised. We said it. We have a guest coming on here to talk about some of this news, and it starts with, in NASCAR, this bomb that was dropped by the man himself, Bob Pockrass, about Saturday at the Clash, where the Cup Series stars will be doing heat races to get set up for what on Sunday will be an LCQ, and then there's a NASCAR Mexico race for the first time at the Clash, and then eventually a feature race. It turns out no fans are allowed in attendance for the Saturday portion of that event. So, really weird. There was a collective WTF, I think, across the internet. Whether these people all on the internet planned on going or not, Landon, as a heat race connoisseur yourself, I think majorly disappointing for you not to be able to go there for the heat races.
Yeah, I think so. I would say, I don't know. I think that I am generally a supporter of NASCAR's decisions. I think that it's possible that we might be looking into this a little bit too deep, but I'm anxious to see what Bob has to say about it.
I want to see some heat races, man. That's what I'm going for, the heat races. I just say, before we get Bob on here, to me, seeing this at first, initially you're like, okay, of course there's going to be a reason. And I think that will come out in due time. And I think we can pretty much understand that it has usually a lot to do with these sorts of events, and especially an exhibition event like this being an odd, a departure from every other event, that possibly there's some difference or thought process in how you run these events, and obviously what is considered the actual event. And I think that's Sunday. So anyway, we've talked. Let's get Bob on. Why don't we do that? Get him on and see what he has to say about when he found this, and what his feedback and response was to no fans being there on Saturday. All right, now join us on the pod, Bob Pockrass, the king of NASCAR media, the most informed guy in all of this sport. Landon Cassill got him here on the Money Lap podcast to discuss this really interesting situation, Bob, which you showed the rest of the NASCAR world in that for the Clash coming up in 2 weeks, no fans are allowed on the grounds on Saturday for the heat races. What is happening here?
Well, I just kind of found that out myself yesterday. I think, in the past you had a practice day on Saturday and then the heat races, last chance qualifiers, main event on Sunday. And I want to say the first year maybe there weren't fans on Saturday. And then I think last year, I know there were some fans in the stadium for practice. But the heats were always on Sunday, and now the heat's being moved to Saturday because you have the NASCAR Mexico Series race on Sunday. It's kind of created, NASCAR says, I guess hadn't been planning on selling tickets for Saturday, and so that's he certainly has some of the fan base upset, and people want to see the heats. Those are fun short races that they really get into.
I think those are. I think to the traditional fan, maybe it is a little bit of a different experience to be told that you can't come, that there's no available tickets to be able to come watch live part of the race weekend that actually sets the starting lineup for the main event. But I mean, if you think about the purpose of this event and the venue and the location, NASCAR's done an incredible job with, kind of injecting ourselves into this new different market and pursuing a new type of fan. I don't know if we need to read too much into it, other than the main event is on Sunday with NASCAR Mexico and the Clash, right? And that's NASCAR puts a huge investment in that. We've got Machine Gun Kelly coming. It's just it's a big one-day event in terms of the main event. The heat racing, I believe, is still broadcast, right? So,
Yeah.
We'll still get to watch it live on Fox and see the whole event going on for Sunday. I mean, is there a thought that some of this was a how would I say business decision? I mean, were there a lot of fans there last year for practice and qualifying? I mean, is it?
I wouldn't say a lot. I'd say, looking at some video, one of the sections had a smattering of fans in it, but I think it's, if you're trying to grow the sport, I think, it's easy to spend other people's money and say, hey, open up. And if one person comes in, that's great. Right.
Right.
But that's, it's not my money, but I think certainly shows NASCAR again the passion of fans, and we'll see I guess kind of what happens.
What do you think? Last year this event was new, right? And in the last 2 years it's been new, it's been fresh, it's been exciting. Are we reaching a point where it's potential that is wearing off for the sport, or is there, a regeneration of new energy towards this event for you, in your thoughts right now?
Well, I think anytime something's new, the next few years after it are always probably going to be a challenge. Now, except when we talk about Chicago, I think everybody's so looking forward to one in the dry, hopefully, right? So I think Chicago's going to get the benefit of almost two first events. But this event, obviously adding the NASCAR Mexico series, I think is a sign that NASCAR wanted to, thought that maybe it needed something to kind of spark or continue interest, something different in its third try there.
So let's talk about, first of all, on Sunday you're going to have the LCQ, which is a major race. You got the NASCAR Mexico race plus the feature race. So there is a full card of racing on that Sunday. But I think more so than just a specific race, in that it is odd that you're in a huge market like LA, you have cars on track in an era, when you think about it, we're not allowed to test anymore, really, besides just very small amounts of series-designated test or tire testing, right? We don't really practice that much. It's around 15 to 20 minutes at times, right? And now we have this big event that's in the center of a city. We've lost a race there from Auto Club. Is it odd to you that in this era that we're talking about lacking almost content in some respects, you have cars on the track and you're not going to use that to show people that? I get it, and I get probably the business reasons and that sort of thing, but to me it's so odd. Bob, you and I have sat at these tracks and seen, when there's people there and there's not enough going on, or there's not enough going on and therefore there's not people. This is an odd decision from my point of view.
Yeah, and I think, I think as how long have they known that the heat races were going to be Saturday for sure, right? Kind of NASCAR kind of toys with these schedules a little bit. They haven't put out the schedule till this week. I mean, obviously they kind of probably had a feeling or knew which way they were leaning, but I think they possibly, and again, I haven't talked to anybody about at NASCAR about this, but I would say, hey, they didn't have people there on the first day on Saturday in the past, and if they didn't know when the heats were going to be, maybe that's when this decision was made. But I mean, look, I think for people who want the sport to be exposed to as many people as possible, you'd love to have you say, well, yeah, open the gates and let people see it and experience it.
I think that would, to me personally, the best way to sell race cars is to go and see some damn race cars on a racetrack. And you got that opportunity. I just feel it's an odd thing to not take advantage of it. Is there any reason for us to think that this is possibly, I know this is a very unique event. Is there a reason to be looking towards other events this year, in your opinion, that we should be on notice that could be changing in some respect, or is this an isolated thing in your thoughts?
Oh, I think it's pretty isolated. I think it's pretty, I mean, there's occasional, some weekends where there might be like a third, an early truck or Xfinity practice where sometimes the stands aren't necessarily open, but I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect any changes at any tracks beyond this.
Don't worry, us truck and Xfinity Jamokes don't deserve to have the attention anyway. Don't worry.
I'm going to throw a random question out there, Bob, because there's, it's the beginning of the racing season. There's news floating from all over. I know you focus on NASCAR. But last week there was some big news with Gunther Steiner in Formula One, and now we don't know where he's going to end up. Is Gunther Steiner going to be at the Clash?
I don't know. I haven't heard any plans for him to be there, but I guess you never know. But I haven't heard any plans, and but yeah, I guess that was a little bit surprising news. I guess you're never surprised when a team that struggles makes moves, right? Which never should be surprised, right? But still, I think everybody wants to see where he is going to land and what he's going to do next.
If you had to place your bet, would you bet that Gunther Steiner would be in a car, in a pit box, or in a TV booth next year? Which would you say?
I would say he would probably have a microphone. I don't know whether he'd be in a booth, but just him roaming around. But I can tell you this: whatever microphone he has, he'll probably have to have a 7-second delay, or maybe a 10-second delay.
That might be a good fit for NASCAR. Then I think we need to bring him over.
I love that. Bob, we're going to let you go because this has been awesome having you on. But before we do, is there anything else that's on your mind as we rumble towards the start of this 2024 season in NASCAR that you're paying attention to that maybe some others aren't right now?
I mean, I think paying attention to the same thing everybody else is, looking forward to seeing how some of the new Ford bodies and Toyota bodies and how they perform. I don't think you'll get a good sense of that until kind of a few weeks into the season. And again, just kind of looking forward to the Clash, just to see who still has some hard feelings from the end of last year and who's going to create some hard feelings for the start of 2024.
Love it. Awesome.
Clash is
Thanks for coming on, man. This has been very cool. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that. That was cool. Good job on you, by the way, texting him. Get him on here.
Yeah, no problem.
That's how we do things, Buddy Lab. We just sort of text and say, "Hey, come on here." All right.
Yeah, well, you made your promise that we would have 2 guests per month, and nothing like lining one up literally minutes before starting the show.
Oh, good. Thank you, by the way, because we don't have. We'd have struggled to have 2 for January, so we would have failed at our first pact of the year. Speaking of failure, the NASCAR Cup Series teams and NASCAR have failed to come yet to an agreement on the ongoing charter pass this coming season and into 2025. They have extended those negotiations by a month, I guess, which I guess they didn't really have much of a choice. They're not together yet.
Yeah, I guess And I want to give a little bit of credit to Bob, because after we finished recording with him there, he did kind of say, we talked about this just briefly, and it was like, what's okay? They extended, but what were they going to do? Not extend? What does that even mean? I think they've kind of probably reached the point of arbitrary deadlines in negotiations. I think that we all probably know that the real deadline is next year's Daytona 500, right?
Yep.
And I still remain in my position, which is I don't know what real leverage the teams have. I don't know at this point. Other than the inconvenience, and it's not a minor inconvenience, but the inconvenience of the possibility that we get a month from Daytona and it seriously looks like Hendrick Motorsports is not going to show up to Daytona. Other than that inconvenience, which I don't even think that that's a dagger to the heart of NASCAR, I don't know what leverage the teams have. And I think that they did have some leverage back when the TV deal was not done, because and the teams made a run at this, right? This was their strategy, was to somehow get the networks to want to force NASCAR to have an agreement with their teams before the networks would sign a deal. They did not accomplish that, right? NASCAR's got their TV deals done. So now what? Now what leverage do the teams have? I'm not a doomsdayer. I'm not trying to be cynical. But if I look to the doomsday scenario and I think to myself, we're a month away from Daytona and there's no agreement, and it looks like the teams will seriously boycott Daytona, what do you think would actually happen? Right? I think that NASCAR is plenty capable of fielding their own cars, right? Plenty capable of finding teams or people with cars to field in the race. And I think that NASCAR, I would even go as far to say that I think that NASCAR is plenty capable of calling a driver like Chase Elliott and saying, if Hendrick breaches their contract with you, which is to provide a car in the Daytona 500 for Chase Elliott, if they breach their contract with you, we will still provide a place for you to race and pay you to do it. And I think that in that moment, again, I'm like, this is so far out. Like, this is doomsday,
This is
right?
highly theoretical. Yes.
But it's highly theoretical. But it's just like, if we're talking about all this face-off and all this stuff, that's what we're facing, right? And in my belief, in that moment, NASCAR wins. I think NASCAR wins Chase Elliott. I don't think...
It is
that's where the money is. That's where the
Yeah.
racetrack is, the Daytona 500. I don't think Chase Elliott cares if he's driving a next-gen car, an ARCA car, whatever. I think he will get paid cash money homie to drive in the Daytona 500, and NASCAR will probably be paying him more than what Hendrick Motorsports would pay him to do it. I'm not saying that it wouldn't fracture the sport. I'm not saying that it wouldn't put the sport, we wouldn't spiral into some dark days. I'm not saying that some drivers will do it, some drivers won't, right? I'm just saying that I think at the end of the day, NASCAR is the one that owns Daytona. NASCAR is the one that owns Talladega, right? NASCAR is the one that owns these races that matter, and the brand and the whole thing.
Yep.
And I think that they win this one. And that's where I don't know where the teams have leverage.
It is a really great point in that I felt like for a while the TV negotiation was the play, right? It was to attach to the TV side. And to have seen the TV thing be announced, there was no charter agreement announced with it, I felt like was a blow to those aspirations. And you put it, the teams did try this and it just didn't come together. Adam Stern did report that he showed an increase of some percentage in what the teams would receive in what they've been offered, I guess, from NASCAR. Now, what that percentage really is, I can't figure it out. Now, it looks like 3 or 4%, but then it's apparently 10 or 20% because it's deciding what percentage of what that they're talking about. So it's actually very confusing.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. We're wasting our time talking about it. Doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't. First of all, those percentages to the listeners, it means nothing. It doesn't. 10%, 20%, whatever. They're all made up numbers. It means nothing. What the listeners and what the fans and what we really care about is a deal going to get done, and what does it mean, right? Like,
yep.
And The other note that never gets mentioned is, because I'm talking about leverage points, right? Are the manufacturer's interest in this whole thing, right? You have Ford, Chevy, Toyota with hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the teams, right?
Yep.
They have agreements in marketing partnerships with NASCAR too and these racetracks. But, think about the GM Tech Center. And if Hendrick Motorsports and, really any Chevy team is looking at boycotting NASCAR because of this charter agreement, who does GM side with?
Yep.
Do they go with the teams to go run previous gen cars at Eldora? Or do they pull their support and stick with NASCAR and say NASCAR will support whatever Chevy you put on the track for Daytona with whoever's driving it?
Yep.
Right? Like, what happens there? And again, that relates to like the question that I have for who really has the leverage here.
Mm-hmm. I think we won't know as until stuff starts to trickle out and sort of see the design of what happens, and if this does get done, or if the can is kicked down the road further, that is a bad sign, in my opinion. And I think that is something that you're probably staring in the face, from what I understand. Just a little bit of feedback from the industry is teams are frustrated, right? That this isn't done.
Mm-hmm.
This should be done. Why is it not done by now? And I can get that. You have record charter prices, and there's a lot of enthusiasm, and there's a ton of optimism. I don't want to sound like we're just going to shill for a second on reasons to be optimistic, but there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic. There's a lot of great things that have happened in the last 2-3 years. You've got these invested new TV partners. Who knows what those are going to create? There's the Netflix show coming out. There's young drivers like Ryan Blaney just goes and wins a championship. I think there's a lot of reasons to be enthusiastic and optimistic about what's happening in NASCAR, and this is an unfortunate undertone to that right now. So as it's kicked down, I think it continually puts pressure on the sport to have that optimism that's been around the last couple of years, and that's not good because the optimism has been good. You got anything else on that, or can we move on?
No, I think that I'm glad that you mentioned that, because there is a lot to be optimistic about, and you said it all. And so the future of the sport is extremely bright, and the teams, the last, I guess I'll back up the teams for just a second and say, hey, they should get more money, and I hope they do. I hope that they continue to be healthy and well-funded, because I think well-funded and wealthy race teams is good for the sport, and I hope they can find a resolution. I believe they will. I kind of like to accelerate in my mind to the ultimate scenario, and that's my brain is doing that so I can figure out like who really holds the cards here, and I think it's NASCAR.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how it plays out. Speaking of playing, Machine Gun Kelly will be playing or performing at the Clash for halftime. MGK. Little known fact about myself: do listen to his music occasionally. Maybe it's my toxic trait. I don't know. But I do like his music. I do appreciate it. I think you mentioned that you do as well. So I like to see that. Go MGK. Make it happen. That's cool. Switching it up a little bit. I like that. I like that decision. Getting a big name.
Yeah, that's going to be cool. And I love MGK. You tried to say you secretly love him, but I don't know why you have to secretly love him.
I don't know. I don't know why I have to say that, actually. It's kind of like I like my, I'm very into emo music and emo rap, so he would fit sort of in that vein. I was a big Lil Peep fan, Juice WRLD, R.I.P. to both of them. So I guess he fits in that, but I don't know if he's as OG as them. I don't know.
He's a good transitional. Well, he's a longtime performer that has adapted with, I think, the current music trends.
Longtime performers, by the way.
Longtime
Jimmie
artists.
Johnson will be running again in the NASCAR Cup Series in a very expanded schedule at this point. 9 races currently. Starting the Daytona 500, he has Texas, Dover, Kansas, the first Kansas, the Charlotte 600, the Indianapolis, Kansas 2, Las Vegas 2, and Phoenix to finish the season. So 7-time. He's showing no signs of quitting, apparently. And doing 9 races. That's a lot.
Kind of interesting. interesting selection of races. I think Kansas surprises me a little bit. Dover in Texas actually surprised me, but maybe not. I mean, Dover, Jimmie's one of the all-time greats at Dover, so they must really think that that'll carry through to some performance. And he also was, I don't want to say all-time. I don't have the stats in front of me, but he was pretty darn good at Texas too. But today's Texas is not the same as the Texas that Jimmie dominated. So I don't know what the mindset is there, but that's cool. And he kind of was giving off these vibes that this is it. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's really he's really stepping up for Legacy Motor Club, which I suppose that was his intention with his acquisition of the other place. And
they've had some positive sponsor news. Advent Health, obviously Dollar Tree and Family Dollar, which we talked about last week. Carvana signed on for 3 more races. So they're doing well in the marketing department, and usually that is a sign of things to come on the performance department when we look at race teams. So I think he's doing what he was, wanted to do there. His team and everyone he's put in place is making it happen. They're moving to Toyota, of course. So I think it's interesting, and I have no problem with him using what he does best, which is drive race cars and be a race car driver to move that organization forward. It'd be, I don't see it any different than if in a couple of years Denny Hamlin's at 2311 running a third or fourth car to push that one forward, right? Maybe he's a little past being full-time, but it's like, hey, I need to do this to get the sponsor or whatever. I'm pushing this. This is how I can help.
Yeah, I hope that I'm anxious to see how this progresses for him in this next arc of his career, because I believe that he was just so well loved as a 7-time champion and the greatest of all time NASCAR driver that we were his brand to me was just the best, right? We're so used to seeing him win that I feel like it was a mark on that when for 2 years we saw him sort of try this other passion product with IndyCar at sports car races, and there was no winning. We didn't get to see the Jimmie Johnson we knew. And then he's returning to the Cup Series with a different jersey, right? All the way down to car number, manufacturer, sponsors, everything's different, and we haven't really seen any relative success, even though he's part-time. And how do you, and it's just like, man, I'm having to reprogram my brain for my love of Jimmie Johnson from, the champion that I'm used to watching win to, whatever this next venture is for him.
Shit, that is a really good point. That is a really, really good point. And I know this has been said, and I think we have said it on here. And I just wasn't thinking about that right then and there. I almost had put aside what happened in IndyCar and the sports car stuff. Because I also saw the sports car stuff. I got to be around that pit reporting wise, and I saw how much fun he was having, enjoying it. So, I think for me, I've always had the joke, every pro race car driver's goal should be to get rich and go sports car racing. Because that's just where it's fun.
But not for the sake of my fans' brand. I mean, it just
for you.
It's just different from the fan. I mean, for him, I think I hope I wouldn't doubt that he had fun and probably doesn't regret a second of it. He just wasn't thinking about my feelings when he did that.
And what we've learned is yours are most
Jimmie
important.
Johnson in victory lane. That's the only thing I know about Jimmie Johnson is that he wins. And now I need to find another way to love Jimmie Johnson.
Yeah, what are you doing, man?
I will.
You're ruining
I think I
Landon's
will.
love.
I think I will.
He got you some rings, by the way.
I do have a few rings from Jimmie, but it was from winning.
Yeah, it was.
Now
from
I gotta
winning.
get.
And you participated in that. I never got my championship ring as test driver in 2012. I don't know if I've ever told that story. Never got it. Nope, no one cared. Not really even a thank you. That's okay. Let's move on. Ware Racing making big moves in 2024. They announced that Justin Haley would be full-time earlier last year, but they announced his number. He'll be in the 51, so that will be interesting to watch, I believe, with a really strong alliance with RFK. They also announced that Kaz Grala will be doing 25 races in the 15 car, which means with this announcement, we finally have confirmation. There's 2 cars in the NASCAR Cup Series of the 36 chartered that will have multiple drivers. The 16 at Colleague, the 15 at Ware Racing. They happen to be one number apart, so apparently, if you were hoping to have a full-time ride, you've got to be 14 or lower or 17 and above, but don't find yourself at 15 to 16.
Yeah, and you know what? Good for Ware Racing. They've taken a lot of heat. Rick has taken a lot of heat over the years, but he has built his team from virtually a start and park Xfinity team up to a multi-series motorsports brand in a very unique and strategic way through kind of licensing. See, I'm looking at it from an outside perspective, right? It's like he's licensed his brand and his sponsors with other operations in other sports, right? And drag racing, and is he in motocross too? Like I don't know what all he's in. He's in a bunch of different motorsports.
He's in motocross. Yep. Sports cars. They've done sports cars. They were trying to go do the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Yeah.
So he's had a unique strategy that I think, and he told me this several years ago. That I think that what he saw different than other teams at the time was just the opportunity of just expanding his marketing platform, right? So being able to go to a sponsor and say, hey, my only offering isn't just a NASCAR Cup Series car. I can sell you a sponsor anywhere, right? Or a sponsorship package anywhere. And he obviously was able to find partners to bite on that. And so he would go to Dale Coyne in IndyCar and say, hey, I've got a sponsor, and my only stipulation is you just got to put my name on it too. Right? And he's pulled it off, and it's definitely elevated his brand, but obviously he's to the point here where his Cup Series team now has the best alliance it's ever had, the best drivers it's ever had, the most stable lineup it's ever had. So I still think, I'm optimistic for their performance. I still think they'll probably finish 30th in points. Because the Cup Series is hard, and you can't, break into that top 25 in points without real, actual key manufacturer support. But, their best day is going to be better than what their best day was in the last 2 years.
And that is fascinating, what you mentioned about his strategy, and that he had thought of this years ago, because we've all watched it, and there was all the jokes and the memes about world domination and taking over, and Rick, is it a series without a Rick Ware car? In 2045, the NASCAR Cup Series is 36 Rick Ware cars versus each other, sort of stuff. But it is interesting because he did identify a gap, has utilized it, had the charter system come to him to create tremendous value that he's able to leverage upon or use as something to build in other series, and now he has that platform, and I've heard him talk about that. I talked to him a little bit at Lime Rock a couple years ago when they were there for their sports car program, and I've talked to him a couple of different places, and I drove a race for him, and that really stuck out to me and how fascinating that was. So kudos to him and identifying that, and for all the sort of flack that he's gotten over the years, they identified something and went after it, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah. So
by the way, go ahead.
Well, one more point to that is it's no different than what drivers do when we control sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
Because if you have a sponsor that's like, hey, yeah, maybe our primary gig is to run Xfinity full time, but if the sponsor says, man, I've always wondered what those dirt sprint cars were like. Okay, put me in one. Let's go. We'll call a sprint car team, and now all of a sudden you're running, full time Xfinity with a handful of sprint car races, or with a handful of truck races, or with a handful of sports car races as a driver, right? We have flexibility to do that. What Rick Ware was really good at identifying several years ago is why can't a team owner do the same thing, right? So he goes to his sponsor, Nurtec, at the time, which was really what ignited that for him, was, hey, you want other motorsports assets? Okay, cool. I can deliver that. So then he just goes and partners with an NHRA team, an IndyCar team, an IMSA teams, right? Makes it happen.
Yep. Really cool. One last bit from NASCAR. Front Row Motorsports, pretty big announcement. They are switching their technical alliance from RFK to Team Penske going forward. This is big for Front Row because what you need to know is that the way things are designed now, because the manufacturers control wind tunnel time and all that stuff, they actually decide who gets aero data and who doesn't. And Front Row has not been a part of that. And so with RFK, that was their access point. But moving to Team Penske, maybe there's something where they're even given more access. I believe Travis Peterson, who's the crew chief on the 34, had some things to say about that, where basically he said smaller teams like us have to do this to survive. And a lot of that has to just do with that aero data and sort of getting that information in tech.
Well, let's not forget that the next gen being on the same platform, and it's like I always tie this back to single source manufacturing and that the cars that is a common race car. That is what allows these teams to hop from technical lines to technical lines in a way that was not as easy before, right? Because before, just even though they're both Ford teams, to switch from RFK to Penske would have been a whole fleet of cars, right? On top of different simulation, different parts, all kinds of stuff, right? So now it's like it's the same cars. Your engineering team is working with a different group of people to prepare and bring cars to the racetrack. So they didn't have to change any hardware, no bodywork, no nothing, right? So the builds of the cars might be a little bit different, but not really. I think
so
that
we might see this more often. Do you think that?
I think you'll see technical lines hopping more often, and I think you'll see manufacturer hopping maybe not as often, but I think it's potential to be more often as well.
And the one thing that stops that often has always been the IP, right? Which is, a lot of Formula One is going through this, and we're going to dive into Formula One after this. But the problem with alliances for the mothership team has always been how much can you give and trust to that smaller team that maybe has people that don't stick around as long, who are changing often, that sort of thing, right? So it forces the mothership to really have trust. And so, but if it's happening quicker and faster and that sort of thing, or people are doing smaller term contracts, that information is going to disseminate throughout the whole field eventually. And what you're going to have is less IP in anywhere. So I think it's going to be a definite interesting time to see this unfold. But I think big for Front Row, who have just continued this march up the grid that has been remarkable since 2021, essentially 2020. So we'll see. Let's dive into Formula One because there's some big things going on over there in that series. You ever heard of that series, by the way? It's got a show on Netflix, and I don't know. Yeah, a lot of people watch, apparently. I do love it. I do love their off-season content. But they got something really interesting going on, and I don't even know where to go with this, but essentially the FIA is losing key people at a rapid pace right now. And we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years a lot of consternation between the Formula One teams and the FIA, between Liberty Media and the FIA being the actual governing body of Formula One, and so the technical rules people and safety and that sort of thing. Whereas, FOM, which is Liberty Media, and the teams are the commercial side to all this. Well, they're losing people really quickly, and they just had the technical director leave, who follows the sporting director of last month, and I think there was 1 or 2 others that have also left, basically. And Toto Wolff said, who has been probably the most, what is the term here, incendiary towards the FIA at times. He said the FIA needs stability amid concerning F1 departures at this time, and sort of goes into saying, look, no matter what the organization, if key people are leaving very quickly, there is an issue. Now, that issue can be culture related, it can be financial related, it can be all sorts of different things, but there's an issue there that's occurring. And I think this is really interesting because, to me, is this the FIA losing power in real time, losing influence that could allow the F1 and FOM and Liberty Media and the teams to eventually, and this is wild, but is that eventually find themselves in a power position over the FIA, who have been in such, I guess, a battle as of late?
It's an interesting topic to unpack, and I can't speak to too much direct knowledge about these personalities and these people at the FIA, but I can tell you that it's interesting that this is happening in a time that is following just rapid growth of the team side of Formula One, right? And when these teams see rapid growth, the bosses and the talent, which might, it's important to note that the talent of a technical director on the FIA side is the same skill base and experience and talent of a team boss and an engineer, right? Those people, those talents can flow back and forth from those positions. You see in motorsports, team bosses retire from this side and then they go work for the dark side for NASCAR, for FIA or something like that. And it's interesting to see, talent leave the FIA, the governmental side, after seeing rapid growth in the team side, where that growth is more sponsorship dollars, more money flowing into those teams, probably better compensation packages for those, technical directors on the team side. And I'm not saying, I don't know if there's specific instances of these guys like Tim Goss and those that are leaving the FIA right now. Are they leaving the FIA and going to teams because there's more money over there, or what's happening? I don't know, but that's kind of the only. That's the connection.
It's funny you went that route.
The point that I want to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you went that route because my initial thought reading all this in the last 2 days was, well, they're just going to teams to get more money because the teams are growing so fast and they're getting so much money.
Yeah.
And I was
maybe I just talked too much about it. Maybe it's that simple.
And I don't know. It's funny. I had the same, and I don't have the insider knowledge to know that one way or the other, and we'll find out soon. I'm sure there's non-competes and gardening leave, as they say in Europe, and that sort of thing. But it's, to me, is like immediately my thought process, just like yours was, they're going somewhere to get more money from the teams. So we'll see how that plays out. I think no matter what, it puts the FAA in a lesser power position at the moment, and it's a bad look. I don't care why they're, whatever the reason they're leaving, it's a bad look. It's not a good situation when there's such a fight with the teams and Liberty Media at the time, especially surrounding the, Andretti Cadillac bid and such. Go ahead.
So let me make one more point on this. You probably got my point, but let me just use one more specific real world example, but I'll be kind of broad because I won't use names. Through the darkest years of NASCAR team ownership in the last 10 to 15 years ago, right? The later 2000s, after this boom and the teams were busting, there was a flock of team directors and team management that became NASCAR staff, right? There was a wave of talent that went from the team side to the NASCAR side. Now, right now, you see the teams with the charter agreements, these valuations going up, sponsorships are more healthy. We just talked about there's 34 out of 36 charter teams have full-time drivers next year. Legacy just signed a 38 race deal with Dollar Tree. Obviously, the teams are healthier right now. And I'm not saying there's a flock going back the other way, but I will say that I've recently bumped into former NASCAR technical folks that I know work for teams now, just within the last 2 weeks, getting coffee. So I'm not saying it's a flock but over a decade ago, the migration went one direction, and it's possible that it can come back the other. And maybe the same thing is happening in FIA right now, where this Formula One teams are just so healthy and rich right now because of everything that happened, that now you have people that worked for the dark side, the technical side, where it's like, well, hang on a second, I want to cash in on some of this with the teams.
And they know the rules really well. We should hire them. Speaking of hiring, Haas F1 team has hired an American driver. They have announced that Chloe Chambers will represent Haas F1 for the 2024 F1 Academy Series, competing with Campos Racing, where the F1 teams have all aligned with these in the F1 Academy to sort of put their livery and sponsors and that sort of thing on the cars and sign development contracts with these drivers. Chloe Chambers, I've actually met her. She was on my show Proving Grounds back on NBC Sports in 2020 when we did our last episode at Lime Rock. And she was just a young go-kart racer at the time. She had set a world slalom record, I believe, at the time with Porsche in like a Cayman GTR. But she's been racing all over, and now is getting this chance in the F1 Academy. So cool to see Haas hire an American. Cool to see a young American woman.
Cayman GTR sounds fun.
Yeah, that would be cool. But I'm excited. I love seeing Americans doing well over there. Another American that just announced a new ride over in that world was Max Esterson, who announced his F3 ride, which is cool. So they're coming. They're on their way to the top, and it's such a different vibe than it was 15 years ago, where 15 years ago you were an American trying to do what they're doing, and you were not welcome. So it's very cool to see. Hopefully she does. I think she'll do great, though. So love it.
Awesome.
Global Motorsports. Before we end this pod for this week, Formula E kicked off in Mexico City. It was not the most entertaining race I've ever watched, unfortunately. The cars do look hard to drive. It looked interesting, but they did have 0 passes at the front. And the second place driver, I don't have the exact quote here, but I'm just going to basically summarize his point, which was he got out and he said, I didn't really try to win because, it didn't seem right. I was happy with second. And then the reporter said, so you just decided to be happy with second and take it. And and the driver responded, yes. I think it was Sebastian Buemi. And I was like, wait, that is the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. Nobody should ever get out and be like, I was happy to finish second. See you later. Good points day. He's like, yeah, good points day, that sort of thing. So this was at the Hermanos Rodriguez track that NASCAR raced at, by the way. A little different configuration. Obviously, it's where F1 races as well for the Mexican GP. But they still go to the stadium. They had 40,000 people in attendance for the Formula E race in the stadium. It was packed. So great crowd, great. The cars look great, the series look great, but not the most entertaining race. And you got to, what's our buddy Jeff Dodds, the CEO of Formula E? Do not allow your drivers to get out and say they were happy to finish second ever again.
Yeah, I don't. We'll have to watch that. Make sure subscribe to the Money Lap newsletter if you want some more updates on Formula E, because we cover it well in the newsletter. And we can move on from this. I will make a note for everything we love about Formula E, and where we see the great racing is on those tight street courses. Yeah. Right? I mean, they lit up Monaco on a race weekend where F1 just has been killing us with these large cars at Monaco. To see them race on that course in Mexico City is like, I don't know if that track's a good fit for them. It's a great track. Yeah. I enjoyed racing on it, but in a stock car, not in a Formula E car that I think belongs on a tighter, shorter street course.
Shit, I didn't know you raced in that race. You did Mexico?
Sure did. Yeah, it was good time. Yeah.
Huh. I didn't even get to do it. It looked cool. It was like a cool event. Huge crowd when you guys were there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was good stuff.
We'll have to dive into some of those stories because I've heard a lot of crazy stories of that era. I'll just tell one real quick.
I didn't have any crazy ones, but I did. It just was an interesting experience.
Well, I have a crazy one. There was a Penske team who was in the Penske truck rental livery, I believe, who wrecked. I want to say they wrecked Adrian Fernandez or one of the local heroes, and they took their shirts off leaving because they were like, we were going to get stoned. You had to go through the grandstands and leave, and they were like, we're not wearing these shirts leaving.
Yeah, not a good move.
No, not at all. This coming weekend, we mentioned at the beginning, the Roar Before the 24, which is the basically pre-event to the Rolex 24 at Daytona, which I'll be at for working for NBC in the pits. But I just want to give a shout out. If you're not paying attention to what's happening for this Rolex 24, this weekend is the Roar where they basically set the lineup for the Rolex. These are some of the names that are in this race in the GTP category. Formula One champion Jenson Button, Felipe Massa, Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, Marcus Ericsson, Colton Herta, Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, Pato O'Ward, Felix Rosenquist, and of course your host of Sports Car Stars. You've got Alexander Rossi with James Hinchcliffe, Romain Grosjean with Iron Lynx, and Devlin DiFrancesco as well racing. So huge IndyCar influence, Formula One influence, and of course you have, as I said, all the Sports Car Stars. So this race, I think in some respects, is just the greatest kept secret in all of motorsports. Now, last year was a record attendance, but it's still not anything like Le Mans or any of those the events. Even the Petit Le Mans, I think, gets a bigger crowd. But it is just the most star-studded field every time I'm there. Every time I'm there, I'm like, hey, that's a Formula 1 driver. Hey, that's an F1 team principal. That's and one other thing. I believe Brad Pitt will be there. They're filming a portion of the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, the F1 movie.
Oh, that's
Lewis
right.
Hamilton. So they're filming a piece. They've got a car running through the night. They've got another car there. Apparently, the script is that he's like a veteran sports car racer that goes back to Formula 1 to help a young driver. Very similar to the documentary called Driven that came out in the early 2000s with Joe Tanto by Sylvester Stallone.
I hope not. Oh, dear God. Please don't say
I
that.
know.
No, it's an exciting lineup. I think there's some good drivers. I would rather see some more current F1 drivers make it over to that event. And by the way, we pretty much don't want NASCAR drivers in the Rolex 20? Have we succeeded the need for NASCAR drivers in Rolex now? Are we not good enough?
I think
we may not be, because look at that.
Cool enough.
That look. Well, I would say not cool enough. You just look at that lineup right there and tell me which NASCAR driver in the field could compete against any one of those guys.
Not in a GTP car,
Allmendinger?
especially. Well, I think the GTP car, he would probably be the only one, but that's a really tough scenario for them to jump into. It's not the Daytona prototype was a little bit more consumable. The GTP cars are proper prototypes, open wheel design, high downforce. The hybrid systems are kind of wild. I couldn't even get a ride as a silver. I got quoted by one team. They wanted $500,000, and they wanted me to, and I was like, whoa, wait a second. I was hoping to get paid. So wait a second. And I was like, I'm okay bringing a little money, figure it out, but nowhere is there for me to get paid in a $500,000 request.
So
and
they
I had
said $500,000, and you were like, yeah, that's about what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking I'd get paid. And I had to do Sebring, and I was like, well, I can't do that. I just want to do the Rolex, and it just sort of died. So I've had no success getting a chance to drive sports cars. Probably in my, right when I'm basically on my deathbed, someone will call me and say, hey, we want you to come race. They'll finally get the chance. But I'll be on TV.
If you continue to like and subscribe to the Money Lap, maybe someday we'll afford to put together
we'll be able to do it.
Rolex
That's
24-hour team.
That's a great plug. Please like and subscribe, and we might get the Money Lap team going out there one day. Dakar Rally update. Just want to give a shout-out once again to some of the Americans, if you're not paying attention. Ricky Brayback now leads the bikes by about 10 minutes. You've got Sarah Price.
2 seconds.
No, it's 10 minutes. That was on the stage 9. He barely won stage 9.
Okay.
Sarah Price in the side-by-sides is in second place over there, which is pretty cool. And then for you, Landon, Carlos Sainz, Sr., by the way.
Oh, my God.
Is leading in the cars over Sebastian Loeb by 13 minutes. That's your update.
I took
right now.
Personal calls over that blunder last week, so my apologies.
You were called out hard. Really hard. I think this has been a very, very long episode that we have gone through a lot. Thank you to Bob Pockrass for coming on. We've gone through basically more motorsports on today's episode than I think anyone has in any podcast ever. That needs to be an achievement that is marked, by the way, by a like and subscribe, right?
There you go.
That's it. Oh, no! We had Bob on, which means we can't get Kyle Busch on. All right. Well, we'll try for him next week. Landon, this has been good. Peace. Thanks for listening to The Money Lap. As always, check out themoneylap.com for the best 5 minutes in motorsports, or sometimes just the coolest stuff in motorsports, delivered directly to your inbox 3 times a week. Check us out on YouTube. We're growing fast over there. And, of course, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. We're all over the internet. We're spreading the word of how cool motorsports is. Check us out.